Never in his life did David expect to run straight into a pack of wild coyotes. But that's exactly what happened. When he saw what they were chasing, he had just seconds to decide, run or risk everything. And what happened after he made that choice? No one could have ever seen it coming. David thought it would be just another peaceful evening walk, until a scream shattered the silence. What he found in those woods changed his life forever. And what happened just minutes later? Well, you're going to want to hear this all the way through. It started like any ordinary evening. David Keller wasn't the kind of man who needed much. He didn't chase big dreams or live for excitement. He lived quietly, simply, working from home, helping neighbors when they asked, and taking long walks on the wooded trails behind his small house on the edge of Cedar Ridge. Those trails had been his escape for years, ever since the divorce. They gave him peace, routine, a way to unplug from the buzzing world and listen to something real. That evening, everything felt calm. The sun was just starting to drop below the treetops, its light turning the sky a soft blend of pink and burnt orange. The air had a chill to it, crisp enough to need a light jacket, but not cold enough to see your breath. The trees swayed with the wind. Leaves rustled beneath David's boots with every slow, steady step. He loved this hour, that strange, beautiful time between day and night, when the world seemed to whisper instead of shout. He didn't bring headphones. He never did. He liked to hear the world, the crunch of gravel, the breeze in the leaves, the calls of faraway birds. Some days he'd even spot deer slipping between the trees. This place was alive, but not loud. It never asked anything of him. But on this evening, something felt off. David didn't notice it at first. It was subtle, a shift in the atmosphere, the kind you don't see or hear, but feel, like the forest had suddenly gone still. Too still. About a mile into his walk, he slowed down without knowing why. It was like his body sensed something his mind hadn't caught up to yet. And then, a sound, a sharp, high-pitched yelp, slicing through the stillness like a knife. David stopped dead in his tracks. It wasn't a normal bark. It wasn't playful or curious. It was desperate, frantic, the kind of sound that stabs you in the chest, even if you don't know what made it. He turned toward the trees, squinting through the fading light. The yelp came again, louder, closer. Then another sound, heavy breathing, quick, panicked. Then the rapid beat of paws pounding against dry dirt. And then a growl, low, predatory. Coyotes. David's gut twisted. He'd heard rumors from neighbors about a pack spotted near the outskirts of town. People had seen them crossing roads late at night or hanging around dumpsters, but they rarely came this deep into the trails, and they almost never hunted this close to sunset. Something was wrong. David stepped off the trail, into the underbrush, moving toward the sound. Branches cracked underfoot, leaves brushed against his jacket. His heart was thudding faster now, not from fear, yet, but from that primal sense that something needed him. Then he saw them, 4 of them, lean, ragged coyotes, moving like ghosts through the trees. Their coats were patchy, grayish-brown, their eyes locked on something just ahead of them, something small, weak. David followed their gaze. There, bounding clumsily through the trees, was a puppy, a golden retriever puppy, no more than 4 or 5 months old. Its golden fur was tangled and dirty, ears flopping wildly as it ran, legs stumbling over roots and rocks. It was panting hard, sides heaving with exhaustion, and its eyes, terrified. David froze. His mind tried to make sense of it. What was a puppy doing out here, alone? This wasn't just someone's dog that wandered off. This pup was running for its life. The coyotes weren't chasing it for fun. They were hunting it. David felt a surge of panic. The pup was too small, too tired. There was no way it'd last much longer. And then, something happened. He didn't think, didn't plan, didn't even consider what might happen to him. He just ran, straight into the trees, toward the coyotes, toward the danger. Hey, get out of here, he shouted at the top of his lungs, arms waving. The coyotes skidded to a stop, startled. One of them snarled and crouched low, eyes glowing in the shadows. David didn't back down. He grabbed a stick from the ground and hurled it as hard as he could. It thudded against a tree near the nearest coyote, which flinched and darted back. The other 3 hesitated. Their ears twitched. They looked at each other. Then slowly, reluctantly, they turned and slunk back into the woods. David stood there, chest heaving, not moving until the last shadow disappeared between the trees. Then he dropped to his knees beside the puppy, who had collapsed on the ground, trembling. Hey, it's okay. I got you now. The puppy was shaking violently. Its paws were raw. There were scratches on its legs, a little blood on its side, but no bite marks, no broken bones. It had come close, way too close. David ran a gentle hand over its back. The puppy didn't move. It was too scared, too tired. Its little chest rose and fell so fast it looked like it might burst. "It's okay," David whispered. "You're safe. I'm here now." And in that moment, something changed. David didn't see a dog. He saw a soul, a tiny life that had known more fear in the last 15 minutes than most people knew in a lifetime. A creature that had no one until now. He gently picked the pup up, cradling it against his chest. It didn't fight him. It just laid there, limp and shivering, as if its body finally understood it could stop running. "I got you," David whispered again. "Let's get you out of here." He turned back toward the trail, heart still racing. Every step felt heavier now, not just from adrenaline, but from the weight of what had almost happened, and from the weight of the tiny heartbeat pressed against his chest. But the story wasn't over, not even close. David made it back to his truck, still holding the pup close. He wrapped it in an old flannel shirt he kept in the back seat, careful not to jostle it too much. Then he drove straight to the local emergency vet, 20 minutes away. The receptionist looked up as he walked in, then froze when she saw what he was holding. "She was being chased by coyotes," David said quietly. The text rushed her back immediately. David waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, the vet came out, a woman named Dr. Karen Leland. Her face was unreadable. "She's okay," she said. "Scraped up, dehydrated. But otherwise, she's lucky. Very lucky." David nodded, relief washing over him. "That's good. That's really good." Dr. Leland tilted her head. "You said she? You sure it's a girl?" David blinked. "Yeah, I thought." "She's not," the vet said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "He's a boy, but don't worry, it happens." David laughed softly, rubbing his eyes. "I guess I didn't look too close. You were busy being a hero." "I'm not a hero," David said, but the vet just smiled again. He'd probably disagree. They let David see the pup a few minutes later. He was cleaned up now, wrapped in a little blanket, for in his paw. When David stepped in, the pup looked up at him and wagged his tail. Just once. Small, soft, but real. David's heart swelled in his chest. It was like the dog knew, like he remembered, like in those big brown eyes. There was trust, and something else. A question. Not "who are you," but "are you staying?" David stayed. He stayed the whole night. He sat in that small, cold room, watching over a dog he hadn't known for more than an hour, but who somehow already felt like a piece of him. And as dawn crept in through the narrow window, that's when everything changed. What happened next was something no one could have expected. Not the vet, not David, not anyone. And it was in that moment, quiet, almost invisible, that this story turned from a rescue into something miraculous. David held the trembling puppy close to his chest, feeling its tiny heartbeat fluttering against his own. The pup was breathing fast, not from exertion anymore, but fear, deep, shaking fear. Its soft golden fur was matted with dirt, and its ears flattened as David tried to speak gently. "It's okay," he whispered, voice barely above the breeze. "You're safe now. I got you." He looked back down the trail. Nothing but trees. The coyotes had vanished like ghosts, but David knew better than to trust that. They were smart and hungry. If they thought the odds were back in their favor, they might come again. He needed to move fast. Cradling the pup with one arm, David turned and made his way back toward the trailhead. His boots struck the path hard, every step echoing with urgency. The golden sky was darkening. The woods were slipping into that strange, in-between quiet where day and night seemed to wrestle for control. And in that quiet, every twig snap made David's skin crawl. The puppy nestled tighter against his chest, as if it too sensed the woods hadn't given up yet. David couldn't stop wondering, where had this little guy come from? There were no houses for miles, no parked cars at the trail entrance, but his own. The puppy had been alone, that much was clear. But how long had he been fending for himself? And more importantly, why? He glanced down at the pup again. There was no collar, no tag, just wide, terrified eyes staring into the dark like they were searching for something or someone that never came. As the trail curved back toward the parking area, David slowed, catching his breath. He could see his old blue pickup through the trees now. Relief washed over him until a low growl stopped him in his tracks. It came from behind. David turned sharply, heart thudding. 2 eyes, then 4, then 6. They were back. The coyotes had followed them. This time, 3 of them stood blocking the path, shoulders hunched low, ears forward, teeth bared. They hadn't given up, and now they were between David and his truck. He backed up slowly, holding the pup close. His mind raced. He couldn't outrun them, not while carrying the dog. And even if he could, what then? They were fast, relentless, predators. David spotted a fallen log nearby, thick, wide. Maybe if he could get on top of it, he'd have some kind of defense. He moved sideways, keeping his eyes on the coyotes as he maneuvered toward it. One of them inched closer, lip curled in a snarl. "Don't do it," David muttered. "Just walk away. Go hunt something else." But they didn't. He reached the log and carefully climbed up, bracing the puppy on one arm and grabbing a thick branch from the ground. It wasn't much, but it felt better than nothing. The coyotes edged closer. Their eyes gleamed with hunger. David raised the stick, ready to swing if they lunged. His heart pounded, so hard it felt like it would split his chest. But then, something strange happened. The wind shifted, and with it came a sound. At first, David thought it was more growling, but no. It was deeper, louder, almost like barking. Then, crashing through the underbrush, a flash of motion. Another dog. No, 2 dogs. Big ones. German shepherds. They barreled toward the coyotes like missiles, snarling, barking, fearless. The coyotes yelped and scattered in an instant, fleeing into the trees, without a fight. David just stood there, stunned, as the shepherds circled around him and the golden puppy, tails wagging like they knew him. One of them looked up at David with sharp, intelligent eyes. He wore a collar. No, more than that, a badge. These weren't just dogs. They were K9 units. What in the world? Before he could make sense of what was happening, a voice called out from behind. "Gunner, Blaze, where'd you go, boys?" A tall man emerged from the trees, flashlight in hand. He wore a sheriff's jacket and looked just as surprised as David felt. "Whoa, hey there. You okay?" he asked, jogging over. David nodded slowly, still in shock. "I think so. I found this pup being chased. Coyotes. Your dog showed up just in time." The officer's eyes widened as he looked at the golden retriever in David's arms. "Wait a second, is that?" He didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he clicked his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I think we found her. The puppy. Confirmed visual." There was a crackle, then a woman's voice replied. "You're kidding. After 3 days? Confirm ID when possible." David blinked. 3 days. The officer turned to him, voice tight with emotion. "She went missing during a car crash outside town. Family's been searching day and night. They were afraid she hadn't made it." David looked down at the puppy, whose eyes, still wide, seemed to soften now. Her breathing was steadier. She was safe, and now apparently found. The officer helped David into his truck and led the way back toward the station. The shepherds, Gunner and Blaze, ran beside them, heads held high like heroes. Inside the small town station, a family waited. A woman, early 40s, eyes swollen from crying. A man holding her hand, and a little girl with a pink backpack, clutching a stuffed animal shaped like a golden retriever. When they saw the puppy, the little girl dropped the toy and ran forward. Bailey, the pup, silent and scared until now, perked up. A whimper, a wag, then a full-on tail thrashing, face-licking explosion of joy. Bailey had found her people, and the family? They couldn't stop crying. The mom hugged David like she'd known him forever. The dad shook his hand so hard it nearly popped off. "You have no idea what you've done for us," he said, voice cracking. "We thought we lost her. We thought." He trailed off. Words failed. David just nodded, overwhelmed. He didn't need thanks. The moment spoke louder than anything. He looked down at Bailey, now safe in her girl's arms, and something tugged at his chest. But that wasn't the end. As he turned to leave, the officer stopped him. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" David paused. "You said you were just out walking," the officer said. "That you heard her cry." David nodded. "That's right." The officer raised a brow. "You were in exactly the right spot at the right time. That trail splits in two about a mile in. If you'd taken the left path, you never would have found her." David blinked. "I didn't even think. I just went right, like I always do." The officer smiled faintly. Maybe she was meant to be found by you." David didn't know what to say, but something in his chest warmed at those words. It was like the universe had been watching, waiting, and he had answered. He returned home that night to his small, quiet house. The night was still, the stars out in full force. But he wasn't the same man who'd left for a walk just a few hours earlier. He had saved a life, and maybe, just maybe, been saved a little himself in return. But as he turned off the lights and got ready for bed, something outside caught his eye. A shape, sitting on his porch, the golden retriever. Bailey, alone. David rushed out, heart pounding. "Bailey, what are you? Where's your—" Then headlights appeared, the family's SUV. The little girl jumped out, laughing. "She jumped out the window when we passed your road. She wanted to say goodbye." David crouched down as Bailey barreled into his arms, tail wagging furiously. "She really likes you," the dad said, stepping out of the car. David chuckled, rubbing behind Bailey's ears. "Yeah, I like her too." The mom exchanged a glance with her husband. Then she smiled. "We were wondering, would you like to visit sometime? She'd love to see you again." David looked at Bailey, who looked back with those warm, golden eyes, the kind that didn't forget kindness. "I'd like that," he said. And from that night on, he wasn't just David, the man who walked the trails alone. He was David, the man who saved a life and found something he didn't know he was missing. A connection, a second chance, and maybe a friend for life. It had been 3 days since David rescued the trembling little golden retriever pup from the Coyotes. 3 days of restless nights, of tossing and turning with worry, of listening for every little noise outside his window in case those coyotes came back. But mostly, it had been 3 days of bonding with a puppy that had somehow already found a place deep in his heart. David hadn't planned for this. He wasn't someone who impulsively adopted dogs. He liked structure. He liked plans. But now, every time he looked down and saw those soft brown eyes peeking up at him, something shifted, something softened. He had called the local shelter, checked social media posts, posted on neighborhood pages. Nothing. No one had reported a missing golden retriever. And honestly, part of him was relieved. He didn't want to give this pup up. He had started calling him Max. Max had followed him everywhere since the night of the rescue. Even when David went to take a shower, Max would curl up right outside the bathroom door, letting out the softest whimper if David was out of sight for too long. But Max wasn't fully okay. Not yet. He still jumped at every rustle of leaves, still refused to go near windows, still froze up if David walked too far ahead on a walk. Something inside him was still wounded, something invisible, but very, very real. And David, he didn't know it yet, but something inside him was healing too. It was on the 4th day that everything changed. The sun was out, the air crisp and clean from a light rain the night before. It felt like a good day to try the trail again. Not the full loop, but just a small walk. Just enough to get some fresh air and see if Max was ready. David clipped on a harness he'd bought 2 days earlier. Max didn't resist, though he looked up with worried eyes, tail low. "It's okay," David whispered, kneeling beside him. "We're just going for a little walk. No coyotes, I promise." It was a slow walk. Max stayed glued to David's leg the entire time, but they made it about a quarter mile in before David noticed something strange. Max stopped walking. Not just stopped, he froze, his body stiff, ears pricked, nose lifted to the air. "What is it, buddy?" David asked softly. Then he heard it, a faint sound. Not close, but not too far either. Crying. David's brows knit together. He turned his head, trying to locate it. It wasn't an animal. It was human. A child. The crying came again, weak but unmistakable. David felt a chill creep up his spine. He glanced down at Max, who was now standing alert, tail straight behind him. That terrified puppy was gone. In his place stood a dog who knew something was wrong and was ready to act. Max suddenly tugged on the leash. David's heart raced. He hesitated. Should he follow? Max barked once, sharp and urgent. That decided it. "Okay," David muttered, unhooking the leash. "Go." Max took off, not running blindly, but zigzagging with purpose, sniffing the air. David ran behind him, dodging branches and ducking under low limbs, heart pounding harder with every step. The crying was louder now. And then they found her. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, curled up under a bush, her face streaked with tears and dirt. Her clothes were torn, and her arms were scratched. Max stopped just short of her, whining softly. David rushed over. "Oh my God, hey, are you okay?" The girl looked up with wide, tear-filled eyes. I got lost," she sobbed. "My camp is gone. I couldn't find it." David's heart twisted. "You're okay now," he said gently. "You're safe." He took off his jacket, wrapping it around her tiny shoulders. "What's your name?" "Amy." "Hi, Amy. I'm David, and this is Max. He's the one who found you." Amy looked at Max, who slowly approached and nudged her hand with his nose. Her expression softened. She reached out and stroked his head, a tiny smile breaking through the fear. David pulled out his phone. Thankfully, he still had signal. He dialed 911 and reported the missing child. The operator told him a search party had been looking for Amy since early that morning. Help was on the way, but that wasn't the end of it. As they waited, David noticed something strange about Max. He wasn't just sitting calmly. He was on high alert again, ears perked, nose twitching, and then he growled. David turned in the direction Max was staring and froze. From the brush came a low, guttural snarl. "Coyotes, Two of them, eyes locked on the small group. David's breath caught. Amy let out a terrified gasp and clutched Max's fur. "Stay behind me," David whispered. But Max didn't wait. That gentle, frightened puppy David had carried out of the woods days ago suddenly launched forward with a fierce bark that sounded nothing like the soft whimpers David had first heard. Max stood his ground, placing himself between David, Amy, and the coyotes. His fur bristled, tail stiff, eyes locked. And then he charged. David yelled Max, "No," but it was too late. Max had engaged the coyotes head-on. One of them lunged, and Max dodged. Spinning and snapping with precision David couldn't believe. The second coyote moved in, but Max barked sharply, flanking him. David grabbed a branch and ran toward the fight, swinging wildly. The coyotes growled, but Max didn't back down. With a final, furious bark, Max lunged again, and this time, the coyotes broke. They vanished into the brush. David dropped the branch, hard hammering. Max limped back toward them, panting hard. He was bleeding from his shoulder. "Oh no, buddy." David knelt down, tears welling in his eyes. "You're hurt." Max licked his hand. The sound of sirens came in the distance. The search party. They were almost there. Amy sobbed into David's chest, her tiny arms wrapped around Max. David held them both. That moment, standing in the woods, holding a lost child, with a brave, injured dog at his side, felt like something out of a dream, but it was real. Max had saved a life, just days after David had saved his. And that was the miracle. The miracle wasn't just that Max found Amy, or that he'd chased off the coyotes again. The miracle was that this little puppy, broken and terrified, had found the strength to be brave for someone else. David whispered, "You saved her, Max. You really did." And as the rescue team arrived, wrapping blankets around Amy and leading them out of the woods, David looked down at Max and knew, with absolute certainty, they hadn't just rescued each other. They were meant to find one another. In the days following the harrowing encounter in the woods, David found himself reflecting deeply on the events that had transpired. The once solitary man, accustomed to the quietude of his routine life, now shared his days with Max, the golden retriever, who had not only survived a coyote attack, but had also played a pivotal role in rescuing a lost child. David's home, which had long echoed with silence, was now filled with the soft patter of paws and the gentle jingling of Max's collar. The bond between man and dog grew stronger with each passing day, rooted in mutual respect and the shared experience of survival and heroism. Max's recovery was swift, his youthful energy returning in full force. Yet, there was a newfound maturity in his demeanor, a sense of purpose that belied his age. He was no longer the frightened pup David had first encountered. He had become a symbol of resilience and courage. The community of Cedar Ridge, upon learning of the incident, rallied around David, and Max. Local news outlets covered the story, highlighting the extraordinary bravery of the young dog and the selflessness of the man who had saved him. Neighbors and strangers alike expressed their admiration, some even bringing treats and toys for Max, while others offered heartfelt thanks to David. Amy's family, overwhelmed with gratitude, visited David to express their appreciation personally. Amy, now safe and sound, had formed a special bond with Max, often visiting to play and shower him with affection. The incident had not only saved her life, but had also forged a lasting friendship between two families. David, once a man of solitude, found his life enriched by these new connections. He began participating in community events, often accompanied by Max, who had become something of a local celebrity. The pair's story inspired others, reminding them of the profound impact of compassion and the unexpected ways in which lives can intertwine. In quiet moments, David would reflect on the serendipity of that evening walk, the chance encounter that had led to a series of events changing his life irrevocably. He often pondered the idea that perhaps, in saving Max, he had also saved himself from a life of isolation. Max, ever loyal, remained by David's side, a constant companion and a living testament to the power of kindness and bravery. Their story, shared and celebrated, served as a beacon of hope and a reminder of the extraordinary bonds that can form in the most unexpected circumstances. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more real-life animal heroes.